Welcome to another episode of Autisable Dads, Life with Autism, from a parent's perspective. With each episode, Rob and I talk with media professionals, business owners, and nonprofits to discuss what they are doing to help families get the services they need and how the public perceives autism. We also talk with other autism parents and autistic individuals about their life and autism. In this episode of Autisable Dads, I speak with Mark Llobell, who is the founder and CEO of the Virginia Autism Foundation and founding member of the Virginia Autism Project. He's worked over the past 12 years with federal, state, and local elected officials on autism initiatives, most recently getting legislation passed on dealing with autism insurance in the Virginia state. Let's listen in as I speak with Mark Llobell about his efforts on autism legislation in the state of Virginia. Hey, Mark, welcome to the Autisable Dance podcast. I'm so glad that
Joel.
You're able to make it here. So, man, a lot's been going on. 12 plus years of getting autism insurance and the age cap removed, and it's quite an undertaking. Why did you now to clarify for our audience, you're an autism grandfather, right?
Yes, I've got a 14-year-old grandson, Mark III, who had a diagnosis of autism back in the year 2000. He was born in 2004. So we were fortunate that I saw some challenges with Mark probably 16, 18 months. So we got his diagnosis actually in 2006 when he was 2 years old.
Oh wow, that's near around the same time our son had to get diagnosed.
Well, it's interesting, Joel, for a lot of reasons. One, I mean, the average age of diagnosis here in the state of Virginia is between the ages of 6 and 7 years old. So, it's certainly something that we as an autism community need to kind of focus our efforts on moving forward as well.
Right. I think, for those who are just, getting the diagnosis, or for professionals or people that are listening to this, autism insurance really was kind of a good luck, thing way back in those days. Describe, just for like the average person, what it meant for the diagnosis in terms of insurance for us back in those days.
Yeah, and when you mentioned that a minute ago, Joel, both you and I chuckled, and our chuckle is not a chuckle of laughter or happiness. It's a chuckle of amazement, if you would, that when I got my diagnosis for Mark, and it was Dr. Eric Madron. He's a great autism doctor here. He's got a son on the scale as well. He said, good news, Mark, is I can give you a diagnosis for your grandson. He has autism. It's crystal clear that's the issue that he has. I said, that's the good news. He said, the bad news is that you're not going to be able to get the services that he needs here in the state of Virginia because insurance won't pay for the services that help these kids.
Right.
And incredulously, I looked across the table at him and I said, at this time it was Dr. Madron to me. I said, Dr. Madron, that can't be possible. If there's services that can benefit this child, why won't we have access to them? And he said, well, one, insurance doesn't pay for them here in the state of Virginia. And two, we don't have a bunch of practitioners that are providing those services because they can't get paid for these services here in the state of Virginia. And I found that to be just unacceptable, unpalatable. And I actually, at that moment, Eric and I spoke the other day, Eric Madron and I spoke the other day. I said to him at that point, I said, that's not acceptable. That's not something I'm willing to accept. I'm going to change that here in the state of Virginia. And he chuckled at the time and said, well, good luck to you. We would love to have that done. Let me know when you have success. Well, I had the pleasure of calling Eric, and he and I have done a bunch of stuff together in the interim in the autism community, so we've become very good friends.
Yeah.
Just about 2 weeks ago, and said, Eric, we got it done. We're now going to cover all of our families in autism in Virginia who have a diagnosis of autism for one of their loved ones, and they'll be able to get the services that they need paid for by their insurance companies, which is really a great day here in Virginia for our autism families.
Oh yeah, that is it was a pretty much a godsend for us to hear that when I saw that in my Facebook timeline that it happened, and I was like, oh man, that's awesome. The now to clarify, what type of services that are now covered, just to make sure that we keep it clear as to what this
Sure.
means.
Most of the therapies and services, Joel, that a child would need are applied behavioral analysis. ABA is really the Cadillac, if you would. It's the service that impacts most of these children in a most beneficial manner, in a most beneficial way. It's a board certified behavioral analyst, somebody that has been trained to work with a child in a one-on-one environment or a one-on-two environment to get that child to recognize that if they want things, they have to learn how to communicate, and they have to learn how to talk, and they have to learn how to be able to reach out to somebody and communicate what it is that they need. And, it could be a simple need such as food or shelter or clothing or help. I can remember days with Mark when he was very young and he cut himself and, wouldn't even leave watching TV, if he cut himself playing with a DVD case, or if he cut himself playing, because he fell off a chair and ripped a toenail. He'd be sitting there and would not even communicate that he needed help. So,
Right.
ABA is really the best idea or best concept I can give you of services, but it's speech, it's occupational therapies, it's behavioral therapies.
Right.
It's working with these children so that they can learn from others and not stay in their own little world. Because, as you know, Joel, very well, most of our kids, given the choice, would stay in their own little world, and they really don't find a reason to come into our world, if you would.
Right. Right. I think the biggest challenge is addressing this particular issue. Now, I had to explain with a reporter several years ago about the insurance dilemma, and she was actually quite shocked that insurance wasn't covering anything, that needed to be covered. Uh, in our situation, it was we had to pull them out of public school, put them into a private school, and the insurance company wouldn't cover anything because it was a quote unquote school, not a clinic. And so we had that thing. Is this going to help alleviate that scenario?
Well, the big dilemma, the big question that's been out there, Joel, and it's a great question. The insurance industry always pushed back and said this was an educational issue, and the education department always pushed back and said this was a medical issue. And you had two very big, powerful lobby groups there that were always trying to take the burden and put it on someone else's shoulders. Let's face it, autism is a medically diagnosed illness. It's something that's diagnosed by a medical professional. The
Mm-hmm.
therapies and services that help these kids are then provided. They're prescribed by a medical professional, and then they're provided by folks here in the state of Virginia who are licensed by the Board of Medicine. So, is this an educational issue? No. Does it have some rollover, and does it have some crossover into the educational fields? Absolutely. But autism is a medically diagnosed illness, no different than AIDS, diabetes, cancer, multiple sclerosis. I mean, you could pick any other illness you want, and yet the insurance industries would pay for the services for those families and for those children, but they wouldn't pay for them for our children with autism. I find that morally repulsive. I find that completely unacceptable. And that's why we started this journey, a group of 5 of us from across the state of Virginia, all the way back in 2006, 2007, to work on bringing that to a resolve and to make sure that our loved ones that have autism, which again, a medically diagnosed illness, get the services and get the therapies they need to live better lives.
Right, right. Now, the organization that you developed or helped create is Virginia Autism Project, right?
Yeah, a couple of organizations, Joel, over the course of the past 12 years. First one was the Virginia Autism Project, and it was a group of 5 parents from across Virginia And everybody had children, if you would, that had autism. I had a grandchild that had autism. Throughout the course of the 12 years, Virginia Autism Project, some of the members, a few, are still active. Most have gone on to other things in life, as you know very well. Being a parent or a caregiver of an individual with autism is pretty time-consuming and all-encompassing. It can take 24 of all 24 hours that you're given each and every day, and doesn't leave a lot of room and time for other endeavors. So a lot of those folks moved on, as you know, to Joel. Our autism parents, providers, caregivers, very high incident rates of divorce and bankruptcy and drug and alcohol abuse. The stress and strain of caring for somebody 24/7 wears on a lot of people. So yes, the Virginia Autism Project was the initial founding group of one of which I'm a founding member and still work with regularly. Over the last couple years, I founded the Virginia Autism Foundation, and the Virginia Autism Foundation is a Hampton Roads-based group at present. We have been working on some autism summits. We've been working on providing respite for parents of caregivers. We've been working on providing safety, such as swim lessons, first responder training, Project Lifesaver grants for bracelets for kids that tend to wander. And it's a much more interactive and aggressive approach to getting funds raised in a community and then services provided immediately back to the parents and families and caregivers. We strive for 85 cents of every dollar that we receive as a donation is back in the hands of a family within 90 days of us receiving that, for a service that's going to assist that family be more comfortable, for a service that's going to assist that family be safer, and for a family that's going to assist their loved ones to learn to communicate and be part of our community. Because, ultimately, Joel, at the end of the day, we want our kids to be members of the community. We want them to be able to respect other people. We want them to be able to live, laugh, learn, and love just like any other child in the community.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We're going to take a quick break here for a moment, and I'd like to really dive into some of the challenges that you had to deal with our state legislature, and maybe some tips and advice you can give, other people fighting for the same challenges, fighting through the same challenges in other states. Right after the break.
Great. Thanks, Joel.
Okay. So one of the things that we're always asked, or at least I'm always asked, is if you've ever thought about starting your own podcast, what should I do? Well, we got on Anchor because when we were trying to figure out how to distribute content or how to be able to record easily, Anchor's worked best for us. Anchor is a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing your podcast. Best of all, it's 100% free and ridiculously easy to use. And now Anchor can match you with great sponsors you want to advertise on your podcast. That means you can get paid to podcast right away. In fact, that's what I'm doing right now by reading this ad. So, if you've always wanted to start a podcast, make money doing it, go to anchor.fm/start to join me and the diverse community of podcasters already using Anchor. That's anchor.fm/start. I can't wait to hear your podcast. All right, back here with Mark Llobell. All right, Mark. As I was just saying before we went on break, the challenges associated with the states and some tips. What were some of the big things that you had to overcome? Because I remember the age limit was a big thing. And of course, it really didn't help us one bit here in the state of Virginia with our son, because as soon as the age limit was set, our son was like a year over what that age limit was. So it didn't really benefit us directly. Why did that happen? And what were some of the other challenges that you guys had to overcome in making the state legislature understand the needs and the necessity?
So, Joel, those are great questions, and I could probably spend 48 hours trying to address them properly. I'll, I'll, I'll try to, as a grandparent of a child with autism, come up with a summation that gets us to the end result, maybe a little bit quicker. But great questions, great challenges. First and foremost, I'd like to say when we came up with the Virginia Autism Project, the first thing we did was reach out and integrate ourselves with Autism Speaks, national organization, international organization, worldwide organization that works on a multitude of things for folks with autism. But one of the things they do extremely well, they assigned us to some folks, Judith Erstetti, Lori Unib, Stuart Spielman originally. Their focus is to help states get meaningful laws passed so that our children, our loved ones, our families can get the coverages that they need. So, big hats off to them. They've been helping us for 12 years, and we're always there to answer a phone call, always here to be at a meeting, always here to meet with a legislator, and probably had much cooler, if I would say, early on, Joel, much cooler heads and the ability to take things down a notch and say, look, this is going to be a long journey, and we always need to take the high road, and we need to educate, and we need to advocate, because a lot of our elected officials, Joel, they don't have family members that have autism, and because of that, they really don't understand the significance, the importance, the need. They don't know what we go through on a daily basis. So, we filed our first bill all the way back in 2008. Bob Marshall carried it. It was House Bill 1588. And, we got trained in committees and subcommittees. And, over the course of this last 12 years, I'm looking at my chart here. We had bills in 08, 9, 2 and 9, 2 and 10, 4 bills in 11, 1 in 12, 1 in 2015, we had 2 bills. 2017, we had 2 bills. 2018, we had 4 bills. And now we finally have some concrete success in 2019 with 2 bills. So most of these bills were written to provide meaningful autism insurance coverage for those that had a diagnosis of autism. And that's an overgeneralized statement, if you would. What we came up against was an insurance lobby, Joel, that was huge and powerful, and is huge and powerful, and has access where we as advocates and parents and grandparents and grassroots advocates do not have. I mean, we don't have, or did not have, access to the individuals and access to the halls of justice, if you would, like the lobbyists do. So, it took us a while to get bills written, get bills submitted, advocate and educate the elected, and I call them elected representatives for a reason, Joel, and I think this is a big part of what we are going through societal now, not just here in Virginia. These are elected representatives, and they're elected to represent their constituents. They're not elected leaders. They're not paid, I don't believe, to lead us. They're paid to listen and represent us, and I think that was the whole reason why we have the Bill of Rights and the Constitution, and why our democracy was set up the way that it is. And I think we've gotten off cue there, because a lot of these individuals now think that they're elected to make decisions based on their moral perspectives and based on their life that they live. And until you've walked in the shoes of a parent that has someone with autism, you have no idea what it takes.
So, I mean, I've had to say that many times to pouring some chips for my kid.
To educate our elected representatives, it was mind-boggling to me. We'd go up there, we'd have a good bill, our kids need insurance coverage, and they say, well, we're kind of thinking that we'll authorize this for ages 2 to 6, and that was mind-boggling to me and unacceptable to me, because my response was, what do you mean 2 to 6? Do you think it's cured at 6? Do you think it goes away at 6? Do you stop services for a child with AIDS, diabetes, MS, cancer when they turn 7? Of course you don't. The illness isn't cured at that point. The services aren't needed any less at that point. But for some reason, our elected representatives were continued to be told in one ear by the insurance lobby that was where they're going to get the most bang for their buck. If we didn't, cap it then the financial burden that would be placed on Virginia businesses would drive businesses from Virginia. Well, nothing could be further from the truth.
Really,
Businesses that take
that was the lobby stance, is that it would drive businesses from Virginia.
That was one of the early lobby stances, Joel, yes, that the cost of providing these services would demonstrably affect a business's ability to stay in business and to pay a fair wage, and they would close up shop in Virginia and go open shop in other states because of the cost of what these services would cost. So, we broke it down. We had actuarialists work on it. We've shown in other states it was a cost of a cup of coffee a month to provide these services.
Right.
But no matter what we brought to the table, Joel, the insurance industry on the other side would always say the sky is falling and you better not open this up. So politicians did what politicians do best. They listened to where their bread was being buttered more so than the grassroots advocates that were actually in the trenches living with this diagnosis of having a little bit of autism.
Right.
So we originally
I think the message that I always state is preventative care is like taking care of an automobile. You take care of it on a daily basis, it's going to reap benefit, dividends. You only take care of it for 3 to 5 years, you're gonna go ahead, buddy. You're gonna after that time frame, you're gonna have problems with your vehicle. It's gonna cost more.
Yeah, and Joel, we got lots of data out there. Again, Autism Speaks and other organizations that show the societal cost is about $2.1 million to care for a child that has autism to adulthood if we don't get him these services and we don't get him or her to a point where they can be productive, self-sufficient members of society. So, we're either going to spend some money up front on this and help these kids live productive, happy, fulfilling, enriched lives, or we're going to be caregivers for them for their entire life.
Right.
So, we'd rather spend a couple $100 up front than a couple $1 million on the tail end. And oh, by the way, we'd rather have them become productive and happy and self-fulfilling members of society instead of somebody that you have to take care of 24/7 until the day they die.
Right. And there's also businesses now being developed and created to specialize in making sure that autistic individuals or special needs individuals have a place of employment. So
and they're finding that they can bring great value to their organizations because their ability to perform a task in a repetitious manner over and over and over again without flaw is unequaled by any other portion of the population.
There's also, just a simple fact that there's businesses that are able to, the compassion, the empathy, the understanding of being able to address multiple different things. Just the different perspective and viewpoint speaks volumes that somebody who's on the spectrum can bring to the table is, compared to the person like you or me, we won't see these things. That's what I've found with people that I've had to work with and stuff that are on the spectrum. They bring a different flavor to the table that has actually benefited, sites like Autisable, sites like, or organizations, or even down in Florida, just something as simple as a car wash. The procedures and everything's in place, and they know how to operate it, and they go, hey, there is a challenge here. Let's fix it. So bringing
I'm sorry, Joe.
No, it's just I'm astonished all these challenges that you had to go through, because to me, and like most parents, it's such commonplace. It's normal for us, but for the lobbyists and stuff, it's about the bottom line in the dollar bill, which is sad. That's just it's just a sad situation. Insurance is about the only thing to where I don't become as unbiased as I would with any other topic, just because it impacted our family so much. Wow. But a lot of takeaways for the people fighting in other states. And Autism Speaks helped out. What other organizations besides yours and Autism Speaks helped out at times?
Joel, that's a great question, and I'm going to answer it to the best of my ability. And I've been trying to get my arms around the thousands of people that have contributed in some way, shape, or form to bring this, to fruition. I've got family members and loved ones up and down the Eastern Seaboard that have donated. I've got businesses that have contributed to our autism summits year in and year out. We've got families that have showed up in Richmond to testify and to call their delegates and their senators and meet them not only in Richmond but in their home offices as well. We've got members of the press that have covered this for us. We've got a bunch of autism groups around the state, whether it's the Tidewater Autism Society or Families of Autistic Children with Tidewater, or Talk About Curing Autism Now, or the Central Virginia Autism Society. It's interesting. Everybody played a part in this at some point along this 12-year journey. Kind of a core group of only a few of us, I can count them on one hand, that were here from day one and are still here on day, God knows what day this is, 12 years later. But it's interesting. People gave where they could give. People, participated where they could participate.
Mm-hmm.
As you well know, Joel, being a father of a child with autism, there are times when your life is consumed with just getting through the day, getting through the week, getting through the month. So
right.
There were folks that disappeared for years at a time and then came back in and were very instrumental in meeting with a committee member, or making phone calls, or hosting a rally, or writing an op-ed piece. So for me to answer that, yes, every individual that interacted with us here over the course of the 12 years, the success we have today is due to their ability to participate really whenever they could and whenever they had the ability to.
It was definitely something that I remember over the years. The Autism Summit here in Virginia Beach, trying to attend to those. Life tends to take over at certain moments.
Yeah, it does.
But having somebody there to take point and to help spearhead this challenge, and to make sure that it just kept at the forefront of the kind of like the battle cry or the battle call, the call to arms or whatever. It's been instrumental in knowing that it's going to be a long road in order to make it happen. But have you seen some of the same type of progress in other states? Did you use other states' examples in your process?
Yeah, Joel, when we started again, we went 5 years or so, we didn't get anywhere, and then they said, well, cover ages 2 to 6, and we went right back. And my grandson turned 7 when we covered 2 to 6, and
Yeah.
a couple of years later, I think it was 4 years later, they said, okay, we're going to let you cover 2 to 10. And my grandson turned 11 when they covered 2 to 10. And I was fortunate, Joel. I had put some funds aside earlier in life and was able to get him the services he needed. My drive for this whole event, this whole time period, has been, how do the parents that don't have those resources go home and look at their loved one every night, knowing that there's services that could potentially benefit them, and yet they're out of their reach and they don't have access to them. That was just completely unacceptable to me, and that was something that I was just not going to let go of until we got resolved. So, this last off season, we got a bill through the Senate last year to move the age cap up to 18. We got killed on the last day of General Assembly in a House subcommittee.
Right.
That House chair came up to me at the end of that meeting and introduced himself and said, "You're Mr. Llobell. I can see you're visibly upset." And I said to him, you have no idea. You just don't have any idea how many families you just crushed, how many hopes, how many dreams, how many children you just left out. And he said, well, that's why I'm over here. He goes, I want you to educate me in the off season. I want you to help me understand why this has been so important to you, because you've been up here forever.
Right.
And I said, okay. I said, I'll get the hair on the back of my neck to stand down, and I'll walk away frustrated and infuriated, but I'll walk away with the fact that you have said that you'll meet with me and resolve this with me in the off season.
Right.
And we did. I got together and harassed and got in front of and met with and educated and advocated, something that Autism Speaks drove into me over and over and over again. Don't get aggravated, educate and advocate. And we did. We got this individual who went back up in the off season and met with a bunch of his associates, and they then became strong supporters of ours. And they were individuals that held leadership positions throughout the House. We already had great support in the Senate, and I've had great relationship with the leadership in the Senate over the course of the 12 years that I've built up. So we now had the House and the Senate get behind us on our bill this year, and that made all the difference in the world.
And then when elections happened, you were hoping the same people would stay in office so you didn't have to re-educate.
Joel, I think the educational process is going to continue. I think as autism becomes more and more prevalent, we're up to 1 in 59 children now here in the United States that's going to be diagnosed with autism this year. And by the way, to put that into context, there'll be more individuals today diagnosed with autism in the United States of America than there will be diagnosed with AIDS, diabetes, or cancer combined. So think about that. You think about those illnesses and how many dollars are spent, and yet those families get the services they need. They get the medical supports they need. They get the therapies they need, and yet our children with autism didn't. So we're now becoming more visible, but we're going to have to continue to educate and advocate and work as a community to get our children out here in the community and get them visible and get the rest of the world to recognize that disabled doesn't mean less disabled, doesn't mean unavailable or incapable. Disabled means that we have to put some services and some supports in place to help them be successful. That's all it means.
Yeah.
You talked earlier about something. I tried to get that point in then, but I remember saying to my wife when my grandson was 3 and 4 and on the floor playing by himself, I said, look, he's not going to come into my world, so I'm going to go down on the floor and get into his world because he's pretty amazed with his world. He's happy down there.
Yeah.
And I came back up off that floor. I'm still down there, to be quite honest with you, but I came back up off that floor after 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, and said to my wife, I said, he's got an amazing little world down there. You need to come check this out.
Yeah.
He's the happiest boy in the world in his world. He just doesn't get our world.
Yeah.
So his world might be better than ours, to be quite candid with you.
I found that to be often the case, that after a hard day's work or whatever, I come home and I'll just hang out with my son. And a lot of times he's in his world, and when he welcomes me into his world, it just means the world to me. It's when he invites me in, it's like I am in Neverland, Peter Pan in Neverland. I'm in those moments to where you have fun, and it takes fatherhood to another level for me.
It certainly does.
So, but that's awesome.
Yeah.
There's so much more I know that is going on with your efforts, and I know that you got a lot of time to devote to a bunch of stuff. But I think we need to catch up probably in a year or so from now, see how things are going with you, and see what else we can be able to do. As
Joel, that would be wonderful. And I'd welcome the opportunity. We got a big safety fair coming up with Autism Speaks on April 6th, which is World Autism Awareness Month. We're going to have first responders from all across the region: Suffolk, Hampton, Newport News, Virginia Beach, Norfolk, Chesapeake, Suffolk, all down in the Harbor Park parking lot one Saturday afternoon. And, we're going to be getting our kids immersed, if you would, with the first responders so they can get to see them and realize that they're friend, not foe. And in times of need, that's somebody you run towards. So, we've got that. We've got some more swim grants we're going to give out. We got our Autism Summit coming up again this year. We're going to replicate these Autism Summits, Joel, around the rest of the Eastern Seaboard. I'm going to go into other communities and show them how to set up a venue, have it be self-sustainable from a cost standpoint, and how to provide services for up to 1,000 autism families in the community. So, we got a ton of stuff coming forward as the Virginia Autism Foundation. And I'm grateful that my grandson invited me into his world. And I'm grateful that we have an opportunity to impact some other families and make their interaction with their children and loved ones with autism more meaningful.
Yeah. It's the work never ends, even though the legislation's been passed. We still got to go. We still got to.
It hasn't been cured. It hasn't gone away. And I'm going to catch my breath. I may not vacation in Richmond next winter, which would be a nice thing. My wife has made me promise that. But there's a bunch of other stuff to do, Joel. And as soon as I catch my breath, I'm going to start getting on it.
Yeah, awesome, man. Thank you again for all that you've done. And look look forward to connecting with you down the road to see what else is going on with you and all your efforts. All righty, man.
Phil, thank you so much for your time.
All righty. Thank you.
Have a great day.
And
Bye-bye.
I appreciate our guest for answering several questions, and it's always a joy to talk with other people who have such an interest in the subject of autism. If you'd like to continue this discussion, please feel free to join Autisable.com and share them. You can also follow us via social media on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. As a reminder, this podcast is available on Spotify, Google Play Music, iTunes, Stitcher, and TuneIn, and many others. Don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe. Until next time, I'm your host, Joel Manzer, and thank you for taking the time to listen to this episode of Autisable Dads, Life with Autism from a parent's perspective.